Welcome to Speedy Walkthroughs, where we show just the important stuff to beating the game. For those first time viewers, this will look different to a normal walkthrough. It'll show just the essentials, so you don't need to spend a long time watching this video. I won't talk about fighting specific enemies unless they're very difficult, but I will show you where to go and what to do. Today we're playing Tyrants Fight Through Time, otherwise known as Mania in some regions. It was originally released for the Amiga and it had various ports. I'll be playing on the Sega Genesis port where it's called Tyrants Fight Through Time, but the strategies outlined in this video should work for pretty much any version of the game you come across. Before we get stuck into it, if you end up enjoying this video then please consider subscribing to keep up to date. I'm hoping to make more walkthroughs like this in the future and subscribing helps out the channel a lot. The most of this walkthrough is going to come down to the mechanics of the game and how that all works, so I'll start talking you through it. You can choose whatever character you want, it doesn't really make any difference whatsoever, and when you get into the island you get to choose a sector. Now you're going to put a certain amount of men on the sector here. You'll get to choose how many that is, but it takes from your pool of men that are remaining, so you can see I have 85 left now, whereas if I were to only use 10 for this battle I'd have 90 left. You get 100 more men every 3 battles you do, because every 3 battles makes up an epoch, and then you get 100 per epoch. Now the epochs do get more and more difficult, so I'd suggest maybe a rule of thumb as about 10 times whatever the epoch is. So if we're on the first epoch here, you could try with 10 men and see if you could win that fight. That means you'd only use 30 all up and you'd still have 70 men remaining. That would carry on over into the next epoch, you'd have 170 left. So that's the sort of strategy that I would go for. If you're playing on the Genesis version, there is a glitch that you can use to clone men. Essentially what you would do is you would click the sector and then quickly come back down and click them off here. And then it would, let's say we came in with 16, you would go into the match with 16, but you would have only used however many clicked down to before it faded out. But we're going to be playing it normally in this walkthrough. I'll use, for example, 15 men and we'll just talk about some of the mechanics in this game. Okay, so first of all, you've got that your men are breeding, no matter what you do. So if you've got 15 men sitting there, that's going to breed and they'll eventually become 16 and 17, etc. You've also got research here, so we can research various bits and pieces. So the weapons are the most useful. What I would really recommend is that you just literally research weapons and then attack the other sector and try and win that way. You could research into your defenses, but more often than not, your enemy is going to progress quicker than you are if you're only using a few men. So you want to get that attack in as quick as possible. That's the way you're going to win this game. So there are weapons there. You've got weaker on the top, stronger on the bottom. And if you click it, you can put men onto the researching of it. And the more men that you put, the quicker it's going to research. The middle column here are turrets that you put on the roof of your buildings. And then they shoot off to other people who invade your sector. The other one is shield. So if your building gets attacked, you can use shield and sort of repair some of that damage. The shield menu is just in here. You've also got this little menu here which tells you what it takes to make a rock. In our case it takes some wood, and that wood gets collected automatically, so we can make as many rocks as we want pretty much until that wood runs out. If we go into the battle menu here, then you can invade the other sector and hopefully win the match. So that's the premise. You just research a weapon, you put men on it, you let those men invade the other sector, and then hopefully you win the match. There are different sectors which are good to pick for different maps, so as we go through I'll be talking about all those which are the best ones to pick. Alright, so moving on to the actual game, if you're playing on this first map, you want to pick the top sector if possible because it has slightly more rocks available to you, but it really doesn't matter. You want to hit the dude up the top and make his legs go open because that means that the time progresses more quickly, and I've used 10 men on this map for example. If we play through that, my strategy is to breed the men so that they get more and more and more, and then eventually assign them to research a slingshot, and then we're going to use that slingshot to invade the other army. There we go. Slingshot should be researched soon. There we go. And I've sped this up a bit because normally it would take you a lot longer. Next map is Bazooka. If you can, you do want to pick the quadrant on the top left of the map, that one there. If not, you'll pick 2s. It doesn't really make too much difference because it's just the number of rocks you can research in that map. So we're going to go through Bazooka. Essentially it'll be the same strategy, breed your men up and then use them to research. A rock is ideal, otherwise you can do a slingshot if you want to get fancy. You'll also notice the other army person, the blue dude, building more sectors, and that's something the computers will do. So you've got to destroy all those sectors to have a chance of beating him. Next we have the map killer, and the sector that you want to pick here, if you can, is the one on the very right. If not, the one down the bottom is pretty similar. Any of those three really are going to be good for you to pick. So again, same strategy here, we'll just wait for the men to breed up and we'll do slingshots. As you can see, I've managed to beat all three of these maps in the first epoch, just using 10 men on each one. So we're on pace for that rough rule of about 10 men per epoch that I was talking about before. So 10 times whatever epoch number it is. Next up is Dracula, and you want to pick that bottom one labeled with the 1 there if you can. Otherwise, you just essentially want to pick any of the 2, 3, or 4 up there. So now that we're in that bottom one, you can see we can research catapult straight away, which is really good. Again, we're just going to do that thing where we're letting the men breed a bit more, and then we're going to do an attack. You can actually start allying your enemies now, because there's more than one team that you're fighting. If we clicked on the green shield up there, we would request green to become our ally. That's kind of useful because it stops them attacking you, but it also stops you from building any more sectors, so you have to be careful. Now this map here is one where it really matters where you pick it. You want to hit that 1 in the top right realistically. If you get the pick wrong on this one, you're actually going to have to mine materials to build weapons. So you really want to select any of those 4 sectors that I've got labeled 1 to 4 there. We've picked the one down here. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to research pikes. Now that's only possible because we're in this sector here. If that wasn't possible, then we'd have to mine moons or something. As you can see, there was a moon on the bottom left just a little bit earlier on. There was a moon down the bottom right there. If you put men on that, you're going to mine the moon mineral. But then it'll take you a really long time to mine enough minerals to make the weapons you need. So that's why it's really important to pick any of the sectors that I've labeled in the image there. Now that we got that, we can just go and beat all these other people. This one here is Formica. Essentially, you want to pick the 1 or the 2. Please don't pick the top left one if you can help it. Sometimes the other people pick sectors before you though, so you have to be a bit careful. If you've picked any of the 2 that I labeled just before, you'll get slingshots automatically. Otherwise, you're going to have to mine for it. So pretty much if you end up in that top left one, you're not going to win this fight. We're moving on to the next epoch with Gaza, and really importantly, you want to get this 1 or the 2. The 1 is really the best one to get, so you really want to try and get that if you can. Luckily we did get that in this playthrough that I've done here, so we're going to get pikes straight away, and then we're going to be able to use those. I'm still using 10 people on each match here. That's a pretty risky strategy. At this point, you realistically want to be up to using maybe 20, 25, 30 people, because this is Epoch 3. So if we're going with that rule of thumb, you'd be using 30 people. If you can do it with less though, that's obviously a lot better, because then you're going to have more people left over for the harder matches later. And you can see what I mean there about not letting the enemies have too much time. If you let them have too much time, they're going to build shields and stuff and start healing themselves. This one here is Hernia. You'd like to pick the middle one if you can, or maybe the top right. Those are the only 2 sectors that are really any good. So we've got the middle one here, which is good. We're going to research pikes. And again, just letting enough men breed so that we have enough to actually beat the other people with. And we just go through and defeat them all. One little thing about moving men around the map, you can jump over your own sector if you want to. So if I want to move from the right one to the left one, I can, because I've got the sector in the middle. Otherwise, you have to move one sector at a time until we unlock planes later on. There we go. Next up, we have Ibiza. You really want to pick the top left if you can, because that has pikes on it. Otherwise, if you pick the bottom right, you have to mine, unfortunately. So we got the top left, which is really good in this playthrough. So we got pikes automatically. We can just research those up and use them. Now, if you're in a map like this where all the other sectors have mining, that's really good for you because we're the only one who can access pikes without mining. Alright, so next up is Junta. There's a few good sectors here. Pretty much you want to pick the 1 or the 2 there. This will involve mining though. So we picked the bottom left, so you can see I've got written there arrows and then half a star. So I'd have to mine half a star for each arrow that I want. So that's really important to get that right. So I'm going to go and mine stars in this playthrough here, and I'm mining 25 stars, and then you go up and research the arrows there. Now, there are a few different recipes that you can make of weapons. So when you make a weapon, it sort of picks a random recipe that you're going to use, and it uses that to make the weapon. So we're hoping that it picks a recipe that involves only half of one of the star minerals. And if we do that right, then we should get enough arrows to beat everyone. There we go. Alright, next up we have Karma. Now this one here, you want to pick the 1, the 2, or the 3 there, and either one you're going to have to end up mining. So if you pick, I think we've got the top left in our playthrough, that's number 3, so we have to mine half a purple, one of those purple minerals. So what we're going to have to do here is actually build the mine itself. So I'm waiting for people to breed up, and we're going to build that mine, and then we're going to mine those purple things. Eventually, once we feel like we've got enough purple things, we're going to build arrows and then use that. There we go. This next one is ladder. It's pretty important that you get the right sector here. If you get that one labeled with an X, you actually can't win the match because you can't. There's no weapons on that sector. So you want to pick the 1 if possible. We've picked the number 1, so I'm going to mine half a purple to build arrows. Now, most recipes for arrows and stuff are going to use a lot more minerals than just like half of one. So the other minerals we're using are tin and wood. And now the reason we picked that recipe for the arrows is because mining takes a really long time. So if you can have majority of your minerals that you're using be tin and wood, that just happens automatically. So that's exactly what we're going to do. There we go. Alright, now we're into the 5th epoch, and we're looking at a map called Mascara. You want to pick the 1, the 2, or the 3 there. 1 has a really good musket recipe. It's mostly tin, and then half of purple. So when I have these 1s, 2s, and 3s as well, 1 is the best one you can pick, for example. So we ended up not in number 1, but we ended up in number 2 based on what the other people picked. So I got 1 bottle, 3 tin, and half a wood, which I'm going to try and build here. So because we got into this sector here, it's not really optimal. You'll see that I end up having to mine a lot because you need 1 bottle rather than just half of something like we need on the other map. The other thing that I've done here is built a factory. With muskets, you have to build a factory to actually get muskets themselves. So not only do you have to mine the materials that you need, you have to also build each musket that you want. So it does take a really long time to do this. But we're going to make our way around the map and gradually beat everyone using the muskets that we got. And there we go. Now, Nausea is one of the worst maps in the game because they're all separated. So you need planes, essentially, because there's no way to get from one sector to the other on land here. Ideally, you end up in that sector labeled number 1, where you make biplanes out of 4 tins and then a half a bottle on half of one of those sleepy ones. So we'll see where we ended up here. We did end up in that sector. So I'm going to build 1.5 bottles and then half a sleep. You'll see when I'm mining my minerals, I tend to mine more bottles than I do those sleepy minerals. Now that was for biplanes, but I actually got very lucky here, and it ended up that all people were on the same sort of landmass as me. So normally on this map, you'd have to do biplanes just like I've described before. But in this playthrough, I got really lucky with that, and I only had to build muskets, so that saved me a lot of time there. Next up is Ocarina. In theory, you'd want the left one, but you have no choice most of the time because the other people might pick it first. And at any rate, you're going to mine oranges to make cannons. Just oranges, that's literally it. So we're going to build our mine here. Yep, and they're going to mine oranges. And then we're also going to build a factory here to hopefully build a bunch of cannons. Once you've got enough cannons, you'll just invade the other sector. There we go. Now this is Pajama. It's the first one of the 6th epoch. And these are the sectors you might want to pick. So ideally that one with the 1. At any rate, we're going to be building nukes. So nukes are really cool. So basically they'll wipe out another sector. So you do need a lab to build nukes, and as well as a factory to manufacture each nuke. But I'm mining stars and those green little tub things to ideally get a lot of nukes. So that's what we're going to be doing. The cool thing about nukes is you only need so many. So once you've mined enough materials that you're happy with it, you can sort of take off your men from that and use them elsewhere. But we're just going to keep building nukes, and essentially what we're going to be doing here is just nuking all the sectors as we see fit. If you can click back to your own sector after you've actually fired off the nuke, you'll skip that really long animation of seeing the nuke explode, so that's really good to keep in mind. And so this is the metagame now with Mania. You're just nuking everyone basically. Alright, up to quota now, and ideally you want this 1 down the bottom. That would be perfect because you can build a cannon out of mostly bones, which is going to be a lot quicker than mining 6 of some mineral to get it. I unfortunately didn't end up in the bottom in this playthrough, so we're just going to have to get cannons normally, but that's the idea. Now it's kind of weird because they introduced nukes in this game, and then all of a sudden you're onto a map that doesn't have nukes on it. Just a little bit weird how that works, but it is what it is. So pretty soon every map is just going to be nuke to win, but this is an example of one where we don't quite do that, we just build cannons. Alright, moving on, we're up to Rumbaba, and the sectors you want to pick are these. Don't pick any that have X's on there. Ideally you want that 1 sector because you can build a nuke out of mostly wood, which is going to be a bit quicker than having to mine everything. But at any rate, you'll make nukes out of your favorite recipe, and then you'll just go from there. Now, one thing that I'll stress is you don't really need to know about recipes to beat this game. Like, the recipes help, and the recipes I'm showing you are optimal, but realistically, if you just mine all 4 elements until something works, it should be fine. And we nuke the other sector, and then we're done. Alright, we're up to Sinatra here, and the optimal sector here is going to be these ones. So you want to pick the 1 if possible, because you can make a nuke out of not much materials at all. Now, one thing that I need to talk about now that we're in Epoch 7 is the concept of shutting down a sector. So what you need to do in this game to actually beat the game is shut down a sector. And that involves getting all the way up to the year 2001. And then if you can do that, then you can shut down a sector. So pretty much what that looks like is you're researching a bunch of different weapons and upgrades and stuff. And every time you research one, you're going to go up in your time frame. So we're at 1945 at the moment, 1980 now. And I'm also researching UFOs. So UFOs are really good. Alright, so I'm going to go make another sector, or start invading other sectors pretty much. And my current sector that I'm set up in is in the year 2001. So if you go to that shield menu, you're going to be able to shut down the sector. But we're just going to keep UFOing people for now. Alright, so I built another sector there. That just happened because I was on there for too long. And we go up and invade the other sector here. And then we're going to hit the shield and shut down our sector. So what that does is that takes the number of men we had, 228 in that sector, and it shuts them down ready for the future. So in this game, if you get to the end of it and you haven't done that, it's going to say you fell down at the last battle and you can't do it. So you need to shut down your sector and have people come through to the future. Next one is Tapioca here, and we're going to ideally get that one with a 1 because that's got some really good jets in it that are mostly made out of wood. Now, you don't have to have shut down a sector on the map that I did just before. I always like shutting it down on that map. but as long as you've shut down a sector at some point, you should be alright. Now again, normally in this map you'd have to research planes and stuff, but because everyone else is on the same landmass, I don't technically have to, although I am going to use planes to beat them. Alright, we're up to Utopia now. So this map here, the optimal is to pick the one there because you can make a nuke mostly out of bone. So do that if you can. The bottom left has UFOs and the three on the top right have nukes. So the thing with nuke maps is you have to be really quick. That's why it's good to save up a lot of people for these ones. If you don't get in quickly enough, other people will develop nukes and just nuke you straight up. So you pretty much need a lot of people to beat these ones. Alright, we're moving into the 8th epoch now, and we're up to Vesper. Vesper looks like this. You want to pick the one if possible. Pretty much every single one you're building nukes out of something. Some may have UFOs, some may have nukes. So this is a lot of trial and error. You will lose the match a few times as people nuke each other, but we were pretty lucky there to make it work. Alright, moving on. This is Wonka. Now, Wonka's a pretty weird one. Sometimes you have to use planes, but if you get on the 1, the 2, or the 3, you can make nukes. So that's ideal if you can do that. And since we're coming in towards the 9th epoch, you can start sort of using your men a bit more sparingly. You'll get another 100 as we come into the 9th epoch, and then you'll be done. Alright, next one we have is Extra. So Extra looks like this, and you want to go in any of those bottom 3, not the X, because you want to make nukes in those sectors. And there we go. So that's the 8th epoch complete, and I really stress if you haven't shut down a sector yet, make sure you do some soon, because this is the 9th epoch and your last opportunity to. Yoga's pretty much exactly the same, you're just making nukes out of either hats and greens, bottles and greens, or stars and greens, depending what sector you're on. If you haven't shut down a sector yet, you're going to need to use UFOs on this map, because you'll need to build another sector, because you can't shut down your only sector if you haven't got like an army out or another sector built or something. Next up we have Zappa. Zappa, you can pretty much pick any sector you want, but those are the ones that I'll personally pick. The one on the left there, Nuke, you can make mostly out of wood, so that's always good, and that's the one that I'm on actually. Now, the other enemy there had some nuke defense things, so when I shot, they actually shot my nuke out of the air, so you got to keep sort of nuking them until it works for you. It's been annoying when they build stuff like that. Alright, last one here is Ohm, and these are the sectors you'd like to pick if you can. Again, if you haven't shut down a sector, make sure you do, and you do that by getting to the year 2001, going into the shield menu and shutting it down. If you don't do that, you're not going to be able to go to the final battle coming up after this. So we're just going to build nukes here. And it automatically forces you to use all your people, so you're pretty much locked into that. Alright, so with Ohm done, we're up to the last battle. Now, it's really important that you've shut down a sector here. If you haven't, you won't have any men to come into this last battle. Now, because I didn't give anyone else enough time to shut down their own sector, there's nothing going on in this battle. But normally what would happen is you would be in there and you'd sort of just attack their sectors. There's no research or weapons or anything in Megalomania. So it's literally just you go to their sector and attack it with normal people. And that's the only time that attacking it with normal people actually works as well. So that's going to be it for Megalomania. I hope that you enjoyed this walkthrough and found it useful. If you did, then a subscription would be very much appreciated, as it helps out the channel a lot. I should have more coming out like it soon, so thanks so much for watching.